The time is 3 a.m. You've finished your third Red Bull in an hour while on your second dose of LSD. It's gamer time. You need something to vibe with your psychedelic energy. Necopara just won't cut it, and needy streamer overload might just send you into a panic attack. You need a dating sim that doesn't conform to traditional norms. You want a toxic, bad bitch. There's only one game out there that can give you what you want, and that's Landmine Princess. You boot it up and black out. Next thing you know, 30 hours have passed, and you're in the dumpster behind a strip club in Moscow. That is the best way I can describe the general vibe of Landmine Princess. Recently, I was sent Landmine Princess, the most absurd and psychedelic looking visual novel, dating sim-esque game I've seen in a while. And unique, obscure games like this are my guilty pleasure. Couple that with the roguelike tag of all things, and of course I was intrigued. I simply had to give this a shot. So let's see if it's any good. The premise of Landmine Princess is a very simple one. You manage to convince the highly emotional and not exactly mentally stable Mina to go out with you, and you've got exactly 5 dates to impress her. As the dev puts it, unlike other dating sims where you can hurt or manipulate the girl, this time the girl can hurt you. Sometimes Mina is happy, sometimes she wants to start drama, and sometimes she wants to do indescribable things to you. Just what I need in my life, dating a mentally unstable woman. Again. Either way, how you approach each date will determine where your relationship leads to. Now, there are so many aspects of Landmine Princess that I have to talk about, and as you're watching the video and seeing the gameplay, you've probably got plenty of questions on your own, but let me sequentially answer them one at a time, starting with the game loop. Landmine Princess doesn't dawdle. It gives you 2 beginning options which affect later choices in ways I don't understand, and you're off to the races. From there, one of the roguelike elements immediately comes into play. The game will randomly offer you different date locations, which will lead to different outcomes for stat gain. The stats in order are affection, trust, lust, self-esteem, dependency, rebellion, jealousy, and resentment. And you are given the opportunity to raise some of these during each date. You can further increase these stats by giving Mina presents, which are, from what I understand, given to you based on date location. Though this method is pretty inconsistent because it all depends on Mina's reaction to the present, and thus the stat gains, which at least to me seem random, and thus you never know what stats you're going to end up with. There are 32 endings in Landmine Princess with a wide range of possibilities. If you enter the game with the mindset, I can fix her, don't be surprised when she's messaging other guys on Tinder. The developer actually gives a guide on how to reach each ending in the options menu, which I suppose is pretty ideal if you plan to achievement hunt this game. Some endings require a lot of and specific stats, and for that reason there are 2 modes of gameplay: Old School, which resets your stats every run, and Roguelite, which doesn't. A typical run-through of Landmine Princess is about 10 to 15 minutes if you are reading all the dialogue for the first time, and 2 to 5 minutes once you've read most of it after that. You'll experience new dialogue between dates, as the game gives lore drops from Mina as well, which can't all be experienced in one playthrough. All that being said, I don't particularly like the implementation of the mechanics here. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 beginning options, which are Aura and Wealth, the former determining certain answers and dates, and the latter being difficulty. I don't even know how you add difficulty to a dating simulator besides raising stat bars, but either way, I just randomized these options every playthrough and didn't find it made much of a difference. Some of the choices during the date determine what you'll do, and others are for introspective questions that you randomly come across, which I suppose is to simulate mid-date conversation. I feel like making these choices are the least interesting part of the date, however, and eventually you'll just be looking at the stats of them anyway without ever reading them. There are a lot of different choice paths to go down, but in the end, you'll just be hoping you randomly get the stats you need. The roguelike modes and elements seem gimmicky and unnecessary, to be honest. A lot of the dates feel like they have the opportunity to give the same stats, so you don't need to hope for a specific one besides wanting to read it for the first time. The presents usually aren't worth it if you're going for specific endings, because you don't know whether Mina will like them or not. And as for modes, you may as well play old school for most of the endings. But if you do want to get all the achievements, you need to get every ending on both old school and roguelite, which seems like a grind. I get the desire to differentiate from other dating sims, which have tried and true paths to specific endings, but it doesn't feel like these mechanics achieve that, since dating sims, technically, are roguelike in nature anyway. The concept is interesting, and that's all I can really say about that. One last thing I noted is that the jealousy stat is really hard to come by, and I went multiple playthroughs without seeing it once. Maybe I was tremendously unlucky, but this held through for most of my time playing Landmine Princess. But just as importantly, since Landmine Princess advertises itself as not only a dating sim, but also a visual novel, let's talk about the writing. Landmine Princess is one of those games that sort of leave you stumped. You go in intrigued, and you leave bewildered. I don't think the writing is bad, but I'm also certain it's not likely 100% better and more realistic than other visual novels and dating sims I've played, like it advertises. The game clearly aims to be a parody of what people think modern dating sims are, with things like having a beach episode or having a bit where you can make fun of manga, while also approaching it with some semi-realistic postmodern edge. I predict most modern visual novel and dating sim enjoyers not liking this, but inversely, I feel it appeals to people who wouldn't typically play those sort of games. In that sense, you could compare it to needy streamer overload in appeal, though the developer is certainly stoking the flames when he actively dismisses every other visual novel and dating sim as a whole compared to their own.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I think what really helps Landmine Princess is that there's only one character to focus on, and there isn't anything distracting from that. There's not even really any protagonist dialogue. You just make choices. Mina is unpredictable, broken, and somewhat quirky, but it makes seeing what she'll say next interesting. This characterization works well with the visuals, but it also makes it difficult to feel this writing is realistic like the developer claims. It's gothic teenage angst turned up to 11 at some points, and I feel if I wanted that vibe, I could go read the My Immortal Harry Potter fanfiction again, which, well, the endings are quite varied, and while there are only several lines of dialogue in length, they seem to have unique visuals for each of them. It's a good thing I went back to do a few more playthroughs for this review, because in the testing copy I received, the endings didn't play properly, so I thought they were just one screen with an ending name, which made my pre-launch playthroughs much less satisfying than the ones I did afterwards. Landmine Princess, to me, is similar to Needy Streamer Overload or Doki Doki Literature Club in that it's a game you want to experience on Discord with screen share to your friends, or just watch your favorite YouTuber or streamer play it. I felt satisfied with the game after a couple of playthroughs and didn't really have any desire to go back and get every ending, let alone every achievement. And I think that's okay. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I got bored pretty quickly of the gameplay loop after the first hour of the game. And if you look at most of the current reviews on Steam, most don't have playtime longer than an hour either. In the end, I feel like it's kind of hard to recommend something like this because one of its main appeals is its initial intrigue. Once that wears off and you've had your fun, you'll close the game and probably never open it again. For a $7 game, I suppose that's fine, but as I mentioned, you can get that experience by watching others, and you may even get more enjoyment out of it that way, because you'll get to see others' reactions to what absolutely carries Landmine Princess, the visuals. The overall approach to the visuals in this game is experimental, as I'm sure you've noticed throughout this video. The synthwave aesthetic is pleasing to look at, while also purposely abstract and weird at some points as well. The model of Mina itself is used dynamically, and she has plenty of outfits, which when used with the various retro filters, keeps the visuals unique despite all the different scenarios. And yet, the UI is clunky and overlaps at some points, and the design feels amateurish in some ways. If there's one word to describe the UI overall, I'd use the word scuffed. And even if you downplay that as part of Landmine Princess's charm, I think it definitely could have been thought out more, because at the end of the day, this is a paid product and not some free browser game. The music is pretty fitting for the aesthetic style of the game, with a lot of distorted rock style soundtracks, and they're pretty good. Seriously, just look at these aesthetics. It should clue you in on what kind of soundtrack you're getting into. The visuals and music at some points may lead you to believe this game has horror elements in ways the writing doesn't, but it never actually breaches that threshold besides a little existentialism. I honestly think it's huge wasted potential. This reinforces my point earlier that the visuals are a contrast to the realism the developer supposedly wants. I get they don't want an ending where Mina stabs you to death, because obviously that doesn't happen in real life, but I really think this game could have had that potential. Though at the end of the day, I'm not here to judge what ifs. Landmine Princess is an outlandish dating simulator. Its visuals are intriguing, but its implementation of its roguelike elements leaves something to be desired. It advertises itself as having realistic writing while pushing away the audience of traditional dating simulators and visual novels. It attempts to breach that sweet spot of being a wacky, intriguing dating simulator like needy streamer Overload, but never reaches the storytelling highs it needs to land that impact. But in every aspect, it's unique, and I can appreciate that. Time for the big question. Do I recommend Landmine Princess? I don't recommend it, and I don't not recommend it. Landmine Princess exists in a reviewer's purgatory, in that it has so many conflicting points of interest that its appeal is very niche. And I'm already a guy reviewing a niche subset of games. Landmine Princess is a great game to share with your friends and viewers, but beyond that, I don't know if this game has enough to confidently recommend it to anybody. Sure, it has 32 endings and 64 achievements, but by the end of that, you won't even be reading the game anymore, and you'll just be getting the exact stats you need for endings, which are only 5 to 7 lines of dialogue. If I really had to give this game some kind of rating, I'd rate it chaos neutral. I thank the developer for sending me this game, I thank you for watching, and now I'm gonna go contemplate my life and listen to Synthwave for a while.